just always been into music. It's one of those things, you grow up in a house whereby your mother's constantly got something on the radio, you're going to be into it, and I've always been good at performing in front of a crowd. As for the radio bit, the music part of it interested me, I was always into the music part of it.
I always liked telling stories, like even when I had Lego, it wasn't just building the castle, I used to have to put a whole story around the castle and all the characters and play everything out. Irish people love telling stories, and I'm Irish, and I just love to, like since I've been a kid, man, I just love telling stories. It's ingrained into us, do you know what I mean?
It is what we do. We are a nation of storytellers, and we always have been.
I'm Johnny Deadly.
My name is Giz.
And you're watching the Studio Series.
On the last instalment of the Studio Series, we took a look into the world of creating house music with chart-topping Irish duo DNA Beats, as they broke down the steps of creating a house track and their rise to fame.
And smacking, it's gonna force you to make all the other elements big and chunky.
In this special instalment of the Studio Series, we talk with two lifelong friends, The Giz and Johnny Deadly, as they discuss the work they do together and why telling stories and performing to people is their preferred way of life.
He's a brilliant wrestler.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And I think it goes to show, right? People might be looking at our truth and going, how did he end up with the belt? He's a comedy act, all this and that.
What's up? If that's what you mean.
This show that I do is at a volunteer radio station. I don't actually get paid for anything that I do. To the best of my knowledge, the station was operating for possibly even as long as a year before I noticed. I saw recruitment posters basically inside an LCFE. They were saying they were looking for DJs and stuff. And I was lucky enough, there was a girl, she was doing work experience at the station named Danielle Daly, and she's big into metal music, and I was just lucky enough that when I came along, she was there as well. And it was decided, well, we can, you're both in the same thing, yeah, might as well start doing the show. So we started doing the metal show and went from there. A lot of the times it is, when I'm building sets, when we're getting ready to put on stuff for the radio, it is trying to fit certain subgenres together, musical stylings, try and have them flowing in together, so it's not just going from one type of music to another straight away, at least not without a reason. So it's just a question of week by week, what's the new stories, what bands have come out, what gig news is there. The metal show, I hate to say it, has become very formulaic, which means that it's not so much a difficult thing, it's the challenge of wanting to be as good, if not better, than you were the week before, and still staying relevant, still making sure that you have people that actually want to listen to you or watch or whatever. In regards Kayfabe or Die, which is the wrestling radio show I do with Johnny Danger Deadly, that requires a little bit more, because that means sitting down and actually watching the events, and not just watching them as a fan, but watching them as I hate the word critic, so as a reviewer, because a critic points out all the bad crap and a reviewer just tries to give you a more balanced thing. But sitting down, taking notes, really thinking about, because I have a certain amount of knowledge in regards to the wrestling industry from years of watching it, just applying that to what I'm seeing and trying coming up with decent arguments, decent commentary, decent stories to talk about when it comes to actually doing the show, and when it comes to trying to debate stuff with somebody that is equally as knowledgeable on the wrestling industry and has probably sat down and has probably watched more stuff, because Johnny will actually sit down and watch the Japanese wrestling and Ring of Honor and stuff like that on a more weekly basis than I will. So yeah, I'm kind of a little bit more stagnant, I suppose, with what I'm doing. Yeah, it's been theorised that Gargano is actually working injured, and the reason the match didn't happen is...
Ciampa's working injured.
Sorry, Ciampa.
I used to draw comic books when I was a kid, and I remember there was a write-a-book competition and everything when I was in school, when I won a prize. I always liked telling stories, like even when I had Lego, it wasn't just building the castle, I used to have to put a whole story around the castle and all the characters and play everything out, and there was always story, and I used to love telling stories, comic books, anything, like literally anything. If I could find any way where I was able to just act out different stuff, I did it. I was working with a horror company called the Emerald Gore Society. Giz also, myself and Giz know each other since we're kids. They got me on board to start filming some stuff because they kind of wanted to up the quality level of some of the videos and things that they were doing, but they didn't have any professional editor, and they wanted to kind of up the game. So I started shooting for them. Then myself and Giz have professionally argued with each other since we were teenagers, and they just found myself and Giz arguing about horror highly entertaining, and then the discussion of, you two should start doing a podcast, came up, and then my knee had gotten injured and I had a lot of free time. So it was like, podcast, that could be That could be interesting. Well, I mean, like, I love horror, man, and I love talking about horror. And to be honest, the thought of being able to argue with Giz on camera and have a couple of hundred people watching and joining in and arguing with us and throwing points and feeding the conversation, I really like that. I love being able to sit down with a load of people and talk. I love being able to talk, period, and especially when I can keep it all circulated around the subject of horror. Delighted.
Goes awry really, really quickly when the plane they're in gets shot out of the fracking skies. Everyone jumps out of the plane. Chaos ensues.
Let's be honest now. Not everyone jumps out of the plane.
Everyone falls out of the plane.
Yes.
The other big thing, the main thing that I suppose I do would be the Gorecast, which we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years, and has gone from being just a podcast that goes out on Sunday nights to being a TV show that goes out on an actual American station called American Horrors, which is on Roku, and if you don't have it, you can check out AmericanHorrors.com. Ha! Cheap plug. But yeah, that's probably the most intensive because it involves finding films, relevant news stories for that week, once again trying to come up with decent reviews and decent points, and so the reviews became far more compressed, and while there's still not an awful lot of ad-lib, most of it is trying to give you a good feel for what it is that we watched. Funny commentary, I hope. Johnny chimes in with his critique from an actual movie making point of view. He would come up with things, and from a certain point of view it wouldn't occur to me. For me, mainly I'll focus on the story of the films. The story work is what I would know because that's what I do. Reading, watching stories, whereas Johnny would come in with the technical side of it. He'd be able to critique and dissect the cinematography, the sound layout, how certain shots are put together. So as a result, while I'm talking for most of the time, when he chimes in, he's probably a little bit more knowledgeable as to the amount of work and dedication that would have gone into making the movies and how difficult it would be. Because a lot of the films that we review, while they're independent movies, we can never ever take away from the fact that somebody's gotten off their arse. They've actually put this film together. So yeah, it might not be the crispiest, cleanest looking thing in reality, but it's still a work of art and it's still an effort to go in. And the least that we can do is try and talk up the good points about the films that we watch, and not just harp on about the fact that maybe they were shot on shoestring budgets. As the show has gone on, we've gotten the quality of the reviews that we have asked to do has increased to the state that we're reviewing films with known actors in them now, and theatrical releases, DVD releases, big budget, well, mediocre budget to big budget, and all of it, all of the shows, everything that I do is just a question of taking other people's genius, ingesting it, and then presenting it to people in a way that I hope they find entertaining and will make them go, oh yeah, I should check out the stuff that crazy mad doesn't know what he's on about was talking about, because that stuff that he's talking about sounds good. So if I can get people doing that, then I've done my job.
No matter how good or bad a movie is, we get that
it's a pain in the ass to actually make a movie.
And it costs a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort by a lot of people to even...
Lots of cultures have loads of stories and stuff like that, but like telling stories isn't something, especially in the day and age that we're in now, like the days is like sitting around the campfire and like telling ghost stories and stuff like that doesn't exist as the way now. You can barely get someone to get off their phone or go out and do that kind of thing. Japan's slightly different, which is weird because it's like they're like the peak of technology, but yet they're still soaked in all of this culture and history and stuff. It's a weird juxtaposition of things, but Irish people love telling stories, and I'm Irish, and I just love to, like, since I've been a kid, man, I just love telling stories. It's ingrained into us, do you know what I mean? Like, myself and Giz cover some pretty dark stuff on the show occasionally, but there's just this weird humour about the way we go about doing it. Like, I can kind of find a bit of humour in everything. And I think that's what I like, finding that bit of humour. I think it's why I like horror so much, because there is this weird compromise. In good horror movies, there's this weird compromise where they realise it's not all about scaring people. You need to give them a bit of a laugh and get them unawares, and then it makes the scare a lot more effective.
Until the Cult of Christ came along and made everyone write down their version of history, Irish history and Irish myth were the same thing. We are, or we were before it got bred out of us, a nation of storytellers. We passed on the tales of our ancestors to the degree that, most, I remember when I was a kid, primary school history book was all Cú Chulainn and Phil McCool, that line being blurred. But it's reflected in the fact that, like I said, the country itself, the history, the amount of stories, the fact that I've been sitting here talking for so long that I'm worried I'm talking too much. It is what we do. We are a nation of storytellers, and we always have been. On the SmackDown. The match that everyone was waiting for was finally about to be signed. Kofi Kingston was getting his chance to take on the heavyweight. For all the shows, I'm either on a camera or in front of a mic, and I get to be me without having to worry about someone sitting there going, oh, will he ever shut the hell up? Because at the end of the day, if people wanted me to shut the hell up, they'd tune out or turn on something else or whatever. So it means that, yeah, okay, they're willing to sit down and listen to me talk about metal music, listen to me talking about wrestling, listen to me talking about horror or whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. If they didn't want me doing it, they wouldn't be listening to it, and I wouldn't have viewers or listeners or whatever.
I want to see people enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? Like anything I do, I want to see people, like, my benefit out of all of this is like being able to sit back and see people enjoy something I did. I just like entertaining people. I don't know why, I've just always been a joking son of a bitch. And I just like entertaining people.
Studio. Studio. What's up? He just said he's on fleek.
We. And I said it taking the piss, and then apparently you told me that's how it's actually pronounced. That terrifies the out of me.
It terrifies the out of me too. I never thought I'd hear those words enter. I just felt I needed to open the show with that, because that actually is,
as opposed to the fact that we're wrapped up because
out
we're
of the three
broadcasting
epic
from the
horror movies.
Antarctic.
Out of the 3 epic horror movies we're about to talk about, that really shocked the out of me more so than anything else.
My job here is done.
I've seen this week. Anyway, back to the more customary introductions. What's up, Gorecasters? Welcome back here to the Gorecasters Sunday night with me, Johnny Deadly, and that hooded son of a bitch the Giz.
Because it's freezing in here.
It is free.